Hey guys, today we're going to be moving into Lyndon Johnson's administration. So we're kind of trucking along in history into the 60s here. And we're going to start first with Kennedy's assassination, which is what's going to lead to Lyndon Johnson becoming president. So JFK was president and was a very, very popular president, almost to the point of when we'll get to Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a very popular president. During his first term, George Washington was a very popular president. Um, but Kennedy was a very energizing president and a very popular president. He was young. He had kids in the White House, small children. He connected very well, came from a very prominent family, was well spoken, good looking. So America really liked Kennedy a lot. He had a very positive message and gave what was considered very positive leadership during a time of the Cold War when people were feeling that times were uncertain. So Kennedy's a very popular president, and that's not to say he didn't have his detractors. He did have some detractors. Every president has detractors. Every leader has detractors, but he was a prominent president. In November, on November 22nd of 1963, JFK is assassinated, and the nation is just shocked. I've talked to people who remember hearing the news, whether they were at school or wherever they were. They remember hearing the news that the president had been shot. And then they found out later over time that the president had been assassinated and that he had succumbed to his injuries. It just threw the nation off. And the nation was looking for LBJ to come into the office as a strong leader. But there's always this problem because of Kennedy's popularity, and because of anytime there's a leader or anybody who's really popular, anytime someone is popular and they're replaced, people tend to not like the replacement unless that replacement honors the memory of the person they're replacing, right? So I know in the talk radio world, I've listened to hosts over the years talk about when there's the replacement guy for the main guy, whoever that is, oftentimes is just kind of like a throwaway person because they're considered maybe expendable at times because the station isn't always sure how that person is going to be received, especially when everyone's attached to the previous host. Now, I'm not saying that the station's trying to do wrong by the next host, but they recognize the trend is that people like the previous person, and when they like the previous person, unless the new person is like the previous person, they're not going to like him. So LBJ very wisely, when he takes the oath, and then he is president, when he enacts his policies, he starts from the position of I am honoring what JFK would want, and I'm taking America in the direction that he would have wanted. So he very wisely, whether in reality or not, states that he's doing what JFK would have wanted. So America loves it because they love JFK and they want to see JFK's ideas come to fruition since his political career was cut short. Just a side note, Lyndon Johnson takes the oath of office on Air Force One. So that's, I think, a very interesting thing that occurs here where he's on Air Force One, finds out that Kennedy was assassinated and was killed, and takes the oath of office on Air Force One. So that's a precedent for the president. All right, now let's talk about Lyndon Johnson's early political career. First of all, Lyndon Johnson was a very strong person. Physically, he was an imposing character. He was big, he was tall, he was broad-framed, but he also had a big personality, a very strong personality. So he was used to getting what he wanted, and he made sure he got what he wanted politically. Side note, in his early political career, there were accusations that he got what he wanted by fair means or foul. He had the nickname Landslide Lyndon because there were accusations of voter fraud in an early election in a campaign that he ran for, not for president or vice president. But in his early political career, he got the nickname Landslide Lyndon because of accusations of corruption. There are also people who would say that he was very egotistical. I'm not going to say that he wasn't, but they give examples that he gave everybody in his family, including his dog, nicknames that had LBJ in them. For example, his wife, Lady Bird Johnson, LBJ, and he had a beagle named Little Beagle Jr., LBJ. So I can see where people got that. I don't know if it was done tongue in cheek or if it was done intentionally, but that's just the kind of person that Lyndon Johnson was. So when Lyndon Johnson takes office, some of the things that he does, one thing is the war on poverty. Now, I'm going to read you a quote. He says, "This administration declares unconditional war on poverty." Now, this really reminds me a lot of George W. Bush declaring war on terror. Now, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but it's a concept. You're declaring war on one thing, and it's something that maybe can't be combated, right? You can attempt to reduce poverty just like you can attempt to reduce terrorism, but unconditional war on it, you're never going to win that war. It's a war that's always going to be fought. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be fought, but it means that it's going to be a war that's a long, protracted war. Now, part of this war on poverty included the Economic Opportunity Act, which established the OEO, the Office of Economic Opportunity. Now, so think about this. FDR had a lot of three-letter agencies, right? LBJ also is going to establish some three-letter agencies, like the OEO, for example. Or another example would be the Neighborhood Youth Corps, the NYC. So this is going to lead to the Great Society. Lyndon Johnson is going to be pushing for a big, big amount of social programs that he's going to label the Great Society. And it's kind of similar to FDR and the New Deals, the first New Deal and the second New Deal under FDR, where FDR is operating at a time of economic uncertainty and a time really of societal upheaval. And his goal with the New Deal is to reassure society, to bolster morale, and to help prop up the economy. Lyndon Johnson is operating in a time of more of economic prosperity, but his goal is to make sure that the economic prosperity is seen by everybody so that those who have advantages and those who are disadvantaged both have access to the booming economy that America is experiencing during this time. And one of the ways that he's going to do that is through the war on poverty, where he's going to create many different governmental programs. A lot of them are social programs, where he's going to create a lot of governmental social programs to help end poverty or at least reduce poverty. And he's also going to create a lot of other agencies and a lot of other programs aimed at equalizing economic opportunity in America. Now, this is all a lead up. So the War on Poverty, the Economic Opportunity Act, this is going to be a lead up into Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs that he's going to roll out after re-election. So tomorrow we're going to talk about that, how Lyndon Johnson made the Great Society after the election of 1964. But he starts by putting his toes in the proverbial water first with declaring a war on poverty and with the Economic Opportunity Act, which Congress is going to pass, but it was kind of at his behest, where he's pushing for this, and the legislature responds in kind by saying, okay, you're pushing for this, this is your vision, we're going to offer this up, with his full support. And seeing the success of this is going to set him up for, once he's reelected, to roll out a whole lot more programs under the Great Society. So this is something that a lot of presidents do, and it's a wise thing to do. Like, we can look back to Andrew Jackson, right? Andrew Jackson, he's going to veto the Second Bank of the United States recharter, and that's going to become a political issue. And then once he's reelected, he's going to see that as America giving their blessing for him to destroy the Second Bank of the United States, which he then does, right? So he takes a step, it seems like America approves because he's reelected, and then he rolls out the rest of his program. That's what Andrew Jackson did. Similarly, Lyndon Johnson is going to take a step, see how America responds, and they're going to respond by re-electing him, or really electing him the first time, because Lyndon Johnson wasn't elected first. He was appointed as president because JFK was assassinated. So then this is Lyndon Johnson's election. Once he's elected, he sees that as a mandate from America to roll out his programs. So we'll talk further tomorrow about this. But what I want you to get today is Lyndon Johnson, he's wanting to equalize economic opportunity. And so he's going to start by declaring war on poverty. And how that practically looks is it looks like operating with the Economic Opportunity Act and the Office of Economic Opportunity to try to trickle down government funding to those who are less advantaged. All right, so that's it for today. Again, just want to encourage you, keep up the good work, guys.